Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be looking at why I art journal, and one of the reasons is obviously for regulating my mental health. But when I'm having some tough days, I really struggle to create. So I try to go into my studio and not force myself to create. That's not the right way to say it, but I know that once I get into it, I'll enjoy it. It's a bit like doing exercise, or so I've heard. I haven't quite found that with exercise yet, but once I sort of get into actually doing something with my hands, I tend to find myself relaxing and just getting into the flow of it. But it takes a little bit of a push to get there. So one thing that I tend to do when I'm in a rut is to go over the same basics that I do a lot. So I start with collage. I just go in and glue stuff down. I've used on here a mix of collage tissues and text that I had in the background because that's what I had sitting out near me. The next thing I will do is to add colour, and quite often I will just go for rainbow colours. Now this is something I will do quite often, is to do some ghosting. And to do this, I start off with a base colour, make sure it's dry, and then I'll put over a next colour and overlap the colours. Then I'll put down a stencil and then I'll wipe through. So I get these overlapping ghosting shapes happening. So again, I'm going in with another colour. I made sure that yellow was dry first, put down the pink or the fuchsia, and then I'm going through and rubbing through. So I can see the pink, I can see some of the yellow coming through, I can see some of that turquoise coming through. So when I'm sort of in these sort of rut days, obviously I've got the collage in the background. I've got using acrylic paints, which I'm fairly comfortable with because I use them all the time. I've chosen a colour palette I use regularly as well. So for this one I've used the turquoise, the fuchsia and cheddar, so basically a brighter primary colours palette that I'm using. Because I'd got rid of a little bit of the turquoise in the background, I went back in and stenciled some back in. So I've still got the same repeating pattern in the background. I haven't had to think about using lots of different stencils because I've just used the same stencil. The other thing that I did or do when I'm in these sorts of moods is I do have a whole heap of collage images already cut out. One night I sat going through my magazines, watching something on TV, just cutting out a whole heap of collage images. These were from a Flow magazine, one of those paper crafting magazines. So they're quite big images, which was good for the mood that I was in. I didn't need to think about it too much. I had a large focal image I could use on my page straight away. So again, I could have used magazine collage and stuff, but in the mood I was this day, it wasn't a bad mood, I just wasn't able to make very many decisions. So the fact that the decision making process was taken away from me was really, really handy. So I'm just going in with my Stabilo All pencil and drawing over what was there on the page. So obviously there was some flowers, adding in a little bit of extra detail, putting in a little bit of extra darkness to the eyes, and so on. So nothing in this page was complicated. It was all there for me. I was just going through the motions. But by going through the motions, I was getting my hand moving, I was getting out of my head, I was starting to relax. I didn't have to think about all the millions of things people have to think about. I was just sort of starting to switch off my brain and actually just go with the flow, which I was really enjoying. To push my image out from the background, I am going in with my water brush to create a bit of a shadow around my image. Now, one thing I will warn you with, if you're using images like this has come out of the Flow magazine, which is a bit like Daphne's Diary magazine. The printing itself isn't glossy, it's on a matte page, so it does tend to seep up into the fibre of the paper a little bit if you use water colour or water next to it. So just be aware. You can see where I've splodged a little bit of water in, it's actually getting worse and getting better. So it will sort of splodge out places you possibly don't want it to. You're not going to get a nice smooth image as you may well want. I am going in though with that outline I did of black pencil just to soften it a little bit, because it is a very soft, obviously watercolored image to begin with. So I didn't want it too harsh. I am using my wet wipe a little bit to help me soap up some of my little spills and trims, but that can work well in some cases, and it can just spread the mess around a little bit more as you go. So just be aware when you're using paper that's got different textures, particularly if it's a matte paper. If you haven't used them before, keep a bit of an offcut and try some of the media that you're possibly going to be using on it, just to see what's going to happen. I've used similar papers to this before, so I had a fairly good idea that what was going to happen when I put my wet wipe on it and when I was going to put my Stabilo oil pencil and wet it next to it. If I hadn't done that before, I probably would have got a bit of a surprise, nasty or not, with how it reacted, so just be aware. When I was going through this, I think this is a quote I found on Facebook, and it just really resonated with me this night. So I decided to write it into my journal, and quite often on days that I'm doing this, it's actually the quote, not necessarily art. The art's good because it's getting out of my head a bit, but it's actually the quote bit at the end that sort of sums up, oh, that's how you're feeling, or that's why you're feeling like this. So I often find by the time I get to writing the quote, it actually really reflects how I'm feeling on the day, or what I need to tell myself on the day a little bit more than the artwork itself. Quite often some people ask me on the channel, you know, do you choose your quote in front, or how do you match it up with your image? It's usually not matched up to my image. If it does match up, that's great, but quite often it's just, this is how I'm feeling on the day, so this is why I'm writing it out. So the one thing you can control is how you treat yourself, and that one thing changes everything. So the fact that I had treated myself to actually making some time for me to go into my art room did change everything, because it completely changed my mood. I walked out of there feeling a little bit more relaxed. I was able to sleep that night. I wasn't necessarily feeling as stressed or as in my head as I was before I walked into the room. And even though I didn't necessarily want to be in there, which is quite surprising, but that's how I've been feeling recently. You know, it's just easier to stay on the couch and binge TV, which is something I haven't done in a long time. I just binge it in front of my art studio, as you can see, well and truly. But actually making that effort to make some time for me is really important. And I forget that sometimes. And I don't ever want making stuff like this to be a chore or a challenge. So that's why I haven't necessarily been pushing myself to go into my studio as much as I have done in the past. Because I don't want to stop enjoying it or stop doing this thing that I love so much. But I also need to remind myself that I do actually need to push myself sometimes to do some things, to do the uncomfortable things. So I don't know if that resonates with anyone else, but that's certainly one of the reasons why I art journal. Obviously, if you follow my channel regularly, you know I also art journal just to have fun, because it is something I really enjoy, and also to practice doing different things or trying different materials and so on. So I don't always art journal for mental health reasons. A lot of people do it for many different reasons, and that's fine. So this may resonate with you. You may find yourself stuck in a rut one day and you just need to go through the motions, but for others of you it might be just practicing techniques, and there's no right or wrong reason for doing it. As long as you enjoy it, go for it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.